Well, hey there. You've stumbled upon the intersection of internet quandaries and psychological insight. Welcome to Veritas Views on AITA, where the quirks of the internet meet the expertise of Veritas Psychology Partners.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Michael McBride, and I'm joined by our dynamic duo of psychologists.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gayle MacBride, and I'm really excited to be doing another one of these with Dr. Daniel Kessler.
As am I. So, Michael, you've got a scenario for Dr. McBride and I to pick apart. Let's go.
Let's do it.
And
first of all,
as we get rolling, actually, I just want to interrupt. I'm so excited. We've done enough of these now that if you're listening and maybe you're new, you can binge a whole bunch of these all at once. I love getting enough episodes of a podcast on, kind of rolling so that I can just start burning through them. We're there, Dan. This is
we're binge worthy now.
I think we're binge worthy.
Great. All right. What do we have, Michael? What do we have out there right now? 10?
Well,
8, 5?
Yeah. Well, this is our
this week, but we won't air this one for a while yet.
Sure.
I was going to say, I think this is actually number 14.
All right.
So
excellent. So if you're listening to this, we have 13 others.
Get out there and listen.
What's our situation this week?
Well, first of all, for anybody who this is their first episode and they're like, what the hell is this? You might not know what Am I the Asshole is. And the simple explanation is a poster out there asks a question and simply says, who is the asshole here? And that's what we're going to help determine. If you're new, also stick around through the credits. There's always a bonus conversation. But for now, neither Dan nor Gayle have heard this or read this before. And let's hit it.
So I will just interject and say, if you're an experienced listener, you might also say, what the hell is this? But hopefully the answer is amusing and something that I want to return to.
Excellent.
So this post did a really good job. So some of the Am I the Asshole posts do a wonderful job of both embodying what the exact question is and also being attention grabbing in the title. And this was one of those that it seems absurd, but it made me laugh and it definitely caught my attention. So that's why it's our topic for today. Which is, am I the asshole for telling my mom and dad that they have to get their noses pierced if they want to see my daughter again?
What?
I often immediately jump in with an answer. And this time I'm just going to be like, I need more information.
This is
one of those. No, this is one of those bullshit ones where they ask a really outrageous question, but then when you actually look at it, oh, that's not so crazy. Or
I hope so. So Michael, enlighten us, please, beyond the headline.
So there's a fair amount of
There's
a fair amount of content here, so I'll get through it as quick as I can. But my husband and I traveled to Mexico to visit with his family. I am an American citizen. My mom and dad are not. My mom and dad got my daughter earrings for her birthday. My daughter's ears are not pierced. She is only 1 year old. I told them that I would save them for her until she was old enough to get her ears pierced. We left my daughter with my parents while we went to go meet up with some friends.
Ooh, I hear it.
Oh, no.
I know what's coming.
Oh, no. It got worse in my head. It was like, I know where this is going.
Grandma and Grandpa are piercing those ears, aren't they? By the way, don't do that.
All right. We should let Michael finish, but
no, yeah, we can, but why? We already know that
that's the format of the show.
Jerks. All right, continue, Michael.
When we went back to pick up my daughter, my mom showed us that we didn't need to wait because they had already taken her to get her ears pierced, as you determined.
Yes.
I got my daughter and dragged my husband out of there before he lost his shit. We went back to our hotel. I am furious. My husband said that my parents are not allowed to spend time with my daughter alone again, ever. I went further. I said I would not be bringing her or any other kids we might have down to Mexico to see my parents. We checked out 3 days early and went home. On our way home, my parents were calling to see when we were coming over. I ignored all the calls and texts until we were back home in Phoenix. We took a couple of days to think things over and cool down. I finally called them. I asked them not to speak until I was done talking. I told them that my husband and I are upset for them getting my baby's ears pierced without a permission. I told them that we want to come back home, but probably wouldn't be visiting for a while. They said my sister and I both had ears pierced when we were babies, and it didn't harm us, so they didn't see what the problem was. I said they're not changing our minds. They started getting everybody involved, including my grandmother, to call me saying I was being ridiculous. I talked with my husband, and we came up with a compromise. We agreed that we would resume visits, but not alone time, as long as they got their noses pierced. They both said we were being stupid, and they're not going to do that. I said no problem and hang up. So who's the asshole here?
Oh my gosh.
Fuck's
Oh,
sake.
wow.
Oh
This
my
is
God.
bad. You
I-
do not do this kind of thing without parental permission.
I'm
I
just
can't even imagine the place that they went unless they did the piercing on their own, which is equally terrible. Like, how do you do that without parental consent?
Oh, no, I mean, well, I suspect if it was in Mexico, rules are often not. I know I don't know about ears piercings. I've never pierced anything. I mean, maybe, but we're not going to go there right now. I know that certainly pharmacies you can buy anything in Mexico, and I suspect that there may not be as many rules around what you are or not allowed to do in a piercing place if grandma and grandpa bring a kid in. But I don't know. I've never pierced anything in Mexico.
I've never tried to pierce anything in Mexico.
No.
I do have piercings, but my memory is I needed a parent's permission because I was a minor.
Right.
But that being said, I mean, okay, so aside, like you have parents that have said, no, we don't want this, whatever
Right.
this is for their child, and grandma and grandpa have decided to, even armed with that information, go ahead and act opposite to that
Mhm.
and essentially attempt to get forgiveness because they couldn't get permission. And
Right.
I'm sure there are cultural aspects here that we're going to underappreciate because I've never been fully immersed in the Mexican culture, but I do think that was a wrong decision, flat out wrong. And the justification that we did it when you were young and no harm, no foul is not rationale. That is not something that's
Yeah. I mean, that's clearly ridiculous, but I'm also like, come on. Like, I'm a little annoyed at everyone here. Like this is your
there's so many
solution.
layers.
I mean, we're not going to bring the kids around you anymore. We're not going to, and you have to get your nose pierced first. Like, I'm going to violate your bodily autonomy and demand that you do this thing that you don't want to do because you did to my kid. Like, there are ways of resolving this that are better than that. And that one just,
I totally agree.
like, come on, mom. Is that mom who did that or dad who said that?
I think it's mom.
But Michael's nodding.
Michael's
Mom.
nodding. Thanks. Yeah, no, it's mom.
I'm just like,
she and the husband came to it together. But I agree. That feels like a 5-year-old solution to a problem here. You're not going to say if you do that,
yeah,
that's just not reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, grandma and grandpa are way out of line doing this, and regardless of their reasoning. I mean, I don't care what their reason is. If the reason is, well, you let me do it or you did, like, I don't care. I don't care what their reasoning is. They're out of line.
Yes.
Period.
Yes. And I think with asking them to get the nose pierced really just made a bad situation worse.
Yeah.
It's not what we do.
Well, the other piece here is that like, I'm angry at these grandparents. I'm really angry at them, and if they were my kids' grandparents, I would be furious with them for doing this. And I would still want my children to have grandparents in their lives, unless there's some bigger thing that makes them not appropriate. And I don't know that I'd drop them off at their house for the weekend, at least not until I was really clear that we'd reestablished trust. But I don't want to. I think losing this relationship isn't necessarily a good thing either.
No, we've got so much black and white thinking going on here. It's almost as if they are saying, we're just never going to leave her alone. Look, she's not going to be this age. I presume, I don't remember, Michael, if you said how old this child was, but it sounds like 1 or younger. probably
One or younger,
preschool. Yeah. And so like forever's a really long time, you know, if you have older children, they can start to speak for themselves. Like this dynamic is going to change. Let's not get so black and white about this.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and again, like pierce your nose or I'm not going to visit again. I mean, this is black and white thinking just all over the place and it's not helpful. I totally respect though, if the parents say, hey, you broke our trust and therefore you will not be the caretakers in charge of my child until such other time as we've reestablished this relationship. And because you can't reestablish it if you're not visiting and working on it. So, you know, you effectively cut off any ability to rebuild and repair.
Right. And that's the unfortunate part here. Like, again, unless parents have been really egregious about things in the past, I don't want my kids' grandparents to not be part of their life if they can be a really positive influence on them. And you know, the more people who love your kids and do good by them, like the better, right?
Yeah.
And if we're going to assume that the grandparents are not toxic, I mean, yeah, they did something pretty awful. Let's not, I mean, it's not quite a, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play situation, but it's pretty shitty what they did.
It is 100%.
And it's a real frustration, but I've certainly seen this tension before in couples, and I'm sure, Gail, you have too, where like grandma and grandpa are like, we raised you and we clearly did an okay job. So why are you telling us we can't do what we used to do? Because shit's different now, grandma. Like, and no, you have to do it this way. And I understand that you don't like it and that's not what you did. It's not an indictment on you as parents. This is the way we do it now.
Yes.
We don't, whatever. This comes up a lot around spanking kids, you know.
I do find that grandparents sometimes really have a hard time accepting that backseat role that they, you know, because they do feel like, well, I've been through it, I've done it. So therefore, you know, just trust me, it's fine. But, you know, we also underappreciate there's another parent involved that they didn't raise, you know, they had nothing to do with. And times have changed. I mean, I used to say to clients, you know, you need to be careful about the parenting advice that you receive and from whom you receive it. If they haven't had a baby in the last 5 years, you might want to think very critically about what information they're giving you, because I was astounded in the 2.5 years between my children, even then, how much things had changed. And I thought I had it handled. And there were things that were different, car seats in particular. Those recommendations changed so quickly, and maybe my kids just sat a bridge to that, but I was surprised, and it became a point of just encouraging and empowering parents to say, I don't have to take my parents' advice. I don't even have to take my older siblings' advice on how to parent, because, you know, these things that we want to consider for our children can change just that quickly.
Yeah, and if there's any area where people feel comfortable giving unsolicited advice, it's parenting. And like everyone, because everyone like thinks, well, I was a parent and I must have been good at it, and so you know, the feedback I've got is going to be right, and that's not.
I will go so far as to say it's not even, I mean, yes, unsolicited advice, but also just criticism.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's kind of like the baby name episode when we were talking about that, you know, a few weeks back.
Right.
Like you feel the right to weigh in here. And A, we didn't ask you, and B, when you did stick your nose and we told you no, and you did it anyway.
The other piece here is, because I tell you I want to do it differently than you did, does not mean that I'm saying you're a bad parent, or does not mean that saying that I'm saying you didn't do a good job. We can disagree reasonably, rationally, kindly with and not, it's not like the end of the world if I disagree with my parents about, although I couldn't really do that now because my parents aren't with me anymore. But like if they were, when I did disagree with my mother, may her memory be for a blessing. When I did disagree with my mother, like sometimes that was taken as a personal affront. And I hope I'm better when I'm a grandparent one day. I hope I'm better at getting the feedback that my kids will undoubtedly give me that I'm doing it wrong. And I'm like, oh, no. And I can hear myself. I can even hear myself going, well, that's the way I raised you, so it must have been right. Like, yeah. Oh, shit. If you're listening, kids, remind me of this when I act dickish. years down the road and tell you that, yeah, I did it right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I've certainly disagreed with my parents, and they've been a bit insistent. And quite frankly, the response can't be a black and white no. As you said, it's always best if there are more people around to love the kids. So maybe you adjust at what points you interact with someone to make it more comfortable and workable. That's what we want at the end of the day. We don't want to just arbitrarily cut people out of someone's life unless there's a real toxicity to the relationship that necessitates that. That is an action of necessity.
And that certainly can happen.
Mhm.
But that's and we're assuming here that that's not the case, that these parents aren't toxic outside of this piece. And really what we're talking about here is I want you to respect my decisions around my parenting.
Mhm.
And you may not agree, but it's still your job to follow what I'm saying because we're the parents.
Let me jump in really quick and build on what you just said, Dan, because that was something, there was a really lengthy, in-depth side conversation in the comments, which are often my favorite things. Like,
Right. Oh yeah.
usually the best joke is not the joke, it's in the comments. But in this case, like one of the side conversations was, okay, like the most glaring problem with the earring thing is you said not to, and the grandparent did it, and you will forever have a lasting memory of this thing. Like it's a permanent choice. Obviously, you could let the holes
Mhm.
close or whatever, but they said, okay, so let's walk it back. Like, what could your parents do? Like, okay, what if they let them have sugar and you said not to have sugar? And, what if, where is the line essentially where it's a problem? Some things are forgivable, some things are not. If you had to say where that line is, what is that? Where is
Oh,
the
that's a good question.
where's the grandparents' fun? Their ability to not be a parent and just kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my
It's such a good question because my own mother will feed my children cookies before a meal. It drives me up a freaking wall. But you know what? She will say, but I'm allowed to be grandma. And I think she's on the correct side of the line for it. I don't love it. She's
I
gonna do it.
I was talking to this fellow adult who is a grandfather who is taking care of like I forget the age of the kid, 4 years old. And, Grandpa, can I have such and such a candy? And he's like, no, you can't do that because. And then he went, wait, I'm grandpa now. Absolutely, you can. And I went and got the candy. Like,
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
like, I mean, I think we need to recognize that there is like at least within my cultural experience, American cultural experience, there is some value to the grandparents spoiling the grandchild, and the number of times that people say like, where were these people when I was being raised?
For
These super
sure.
nice, indulgent, like where were you when I was growing up? When I like you wouldn't have done any of this shit for
Yeah.
me. Like,
Yeah.
why are you being so cool to my kid? And that's part of being a grandparent is the opportunity to spoil your grandkids. So like there are going to be these clashes,
Yeah.
hopefully about things that are not so boundary violations as this one.
Yeah. Well, and I think the line is fuzzy at best. I
Yeah.
have clients who have said, I've had my parents take care of my kids and they don't put them on the nap schedule. Or they have napped them when I don't want them to nap, or, those kinds of things. And they have gotten to the point where, I can't let my parent watch my child anymore because they're not respecting my wishes. And I think the line is fuzzy because it's different for each of us. People have definitive views around whether or not you smoke around their child, or even have smoked in your car and then transport that child in your car. I've had clients be really particular about that.
Yeah, and what a hard and while by the way, I think everyone's shitty here. I also want to be aware that that it's really hard to make that transition. I've heard grandparents say to their children about their grandchildren, about like, hey, like, don't tell me what to do with your kid. I wiped your butt. Like, I don't need you to tell me that I can't do this when I'm the parent here or I'm the grandparent here. And there is a reality to how challenging it is to give up that role of being able to make all the decisions because now you've got to acquiesce to your adult child's desire around their child. And that's a tough transition for a lot of grandparents to make.
It is.
Yeah.
Michael, you look like you have something you want to add or say.
Well, I was going to say, Dan very slyly offered his judgment, which is everybody sucks here.
I heard that. I heard that.
So where are you at, Gail?
Yeah, everybody sucks here. I really am upset at the grandparents, and I think that was probably because I'm not a grandparent yet, but I'm a parent, and I could see how quickly we slide into making a decision for the child that I wouldn't want to have made. So I was really pretty annoyed at the grandparents first. But I really liked, and Dan, you really hit it on the head. They violated the child's body autonomy by getting her ears pierced and against the parents' wishes. And now the parents are doing this tit for tat thing by coming back and saying to their parents, now you need to pierce your nose. I'm going to push you on your body autonomy, and I'm going to hold that hostage so that if you want a relationship with your grandchild. And I don't like that either. There's no world in which we can ask someone to do something with their body in a quid pro quo kind of way that's actually going to make this any better. No one's going to feel good with that solution. And that's what makes you know what? I might even go further. Not everybody sucks here. Everyone here are assholes. I think they're all assholes. I'm a spider in the nice end. I'm going, everyone's an asshole here.
No, everyone's pretty shitty here. Everyone missed the opportunity to be respectful to someone else. Everyone missed the opportunity for a grown-up. I say this over and over again. Have a fucking grown-up conversation. Mom, I am really angry at you for doing this. You violated like my wishes as a parent, and this is not okay with me. I need to know that I can trust you before you can be around my child. And the grandparents like, yeah, we screwed up big time. We totally, like, everyone should be doing this, and like not this kind of like, well, you have to do this and I'll do that. No, I have the right to because I did as parent. Like, everyone's just getting caught up in their own shit, and no one's trying to work it out in a way that makes everybody happy and brings this family together. Everyone's just trying to tear this family apart.
Yeah.
So you all suck, except for the kid.
Oh, that kid.
Who probably has, probably doesn't have earrings anymore. I'm guessing they took them out, and they'll heal over, and given her age, probably won't remember anything about it because juvenile amnesia is present until about age 2. So fortunately, there won't be any recollection. I believe, is that still accurate?
As far as I know, yeah.
I think it's accurate. Yeah, they just don't remember anything before that point. So probably be fine.
Yeah.
Well, but wow. They all
may have some big questions about where her grandparents are.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be terrible too?
That would be a huge loss.
That would really suck.
I mean, she could potentially be missing out on a huge part of not just her family, but her heritage, because now we've got, people living in another country. And if they hold her from experiencing that, they will cut her off, and to some extent from her cultural roots. Yeah.
All right, Michael.
Yeah. So the internet fell into 3 camps. They were, you're not the asshole. It was a violation of your trust. Okay. The other one was, you're the asshole for making an outrageous request. And then the third, and I would say the most compelling, agrees with you that everybody's shitty here. Everybody's an asshole. And my favorite comment in the everybody sucks here was, your request, which you believe to be an ultimatum and outrageous, still gives them the choice that your daughter and you did not have. And I was like, wow, that's actually pretty insightful.
That is. That's really interesting. I do, I sometimes think about this idea of what if and play it all the way through to its logical conclusion. What if the parents go, all right, that's worth it, and they show up with pierced noses? Now what?
Yeah, you still haven't resolved. You haven't resolved the underlying, like, okay, well, we did it, so we'll do something else.
One for each of us, one for each of her earlobes, like,
we'll just do what we need to do. Whenever we screw up, we'll do the punishment and we'll move on. Like,
right? Like, no, that's just pretty ugly. So,
yeah.
So this other kind of longer post is in general about situations like this. Where it says there are so many times these posts come about because, just like you were saying, the parents and the grandparents butt heads over what's appropriate or not. And they always seem to follow this schema of, you did this thing and now an ultimatum, now what happens, never resolving the issue. You need to close the loop and come back. So I was very glad to see that. Ultimately, they said, stick to your guns about, the line that you drew, but don't require something equally ridiculous. You need to move forward from here. So,
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
We agree then with the internet. At least I agree with the internet on this one. If that was the primary response, because I think I just hate seeing families torn apart unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And everyone is taking this family down a really ugly path, and there are opportunities to save this. So let's save this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, thanks for humoring me and going down this road. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and just kind of the topic kind of definitely caught my eye. Remember though, morality is often shades of gray and not just black and white, as we've pointed out in this episode.
And I got to tell you, I am constantly amazed at the internet and the strange scenarios that come about in this particular form, and you just can't make this stuff up.
So stay tuned for a special conversation after the credits. And also, you should like and follow and subscribe and tell your friends, because that matters.
Definitely. As Dan said, follow, share, like, review, do all those things on any of the podcast platforms. And definitely stick around through the credits. They're not too long, and they're kind of funny. I like the credits, but
yeah.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing this show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael McBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. McBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
Thanks for listening. As promised, here's that bonus conversation.
Michael, how do you pick these? Like, how do you make the decisions on these? Like, what I mean, briefly.
Sure.
Well, qualifying request.
Briefly is important with me. I appreciate that. And I'll try to stick to it. I scroll through them and I look for topics that kind of intrigue me. And then usually they're disappointing. Usually the headline is attention grabbing, clickbaity kind of stuff. And then like the conversation doesn't really go anywhere. I will say there are an awful lot of these that are posted by minors, like under 18. And I almost universally discount those because, I don't know, I remember being a minor and I was dumb. And so like the questions they ask are, I think, kind of frivolous, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do that. But
well, no, I also think there'll be a consent issue here. I mean, if an adult posts something online, they know they're broadcasting to the world, and I wouldn't feel comfortable if there was one from a minor moving forward with it. So I think you're right there, Michael.
I like your explanation better than mine. I'm going to go with that from now on instead of just discounting the concerns of minors.
No, I think I'm glad to be of service.
Really clear, he does not discount the opinions of minors that live in his household. I can attest to that. But online, I do think it's a consent issue. I agree.
Yeah, but no, usually, I'm looking for something that I think you guys can sink your teeth into. And, I know a little bit about each of you. And so sometimes I find something that I go like, ooh, I wonder what that'll bring out in the conversation. And it's kind of fun to see if you take that bait or not. Usually you do, which is good. But
tailored.
And then, sometimes it's just the ones that are really hot online, that have lots of comments. I'll be drawn to those because I'll be like, well, there must be something that people are worth having this conversation about. So I don't know.
That's as good a way as any.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Michael. No, thanks again, Michael, for coming up with a really terrific and interesting question.
It's better than the eeny, meeny, miny, mo option that he had, when we first started.
That one would suck.
I do appreciate the time you put into selecting these because I'm sure you come up with them and we just have to sit back and chat. Fantastic. I know there's some work that goes into it ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Tune again next week for a wonderful Am I the Asshole debate.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.